today's speaker. I have here a beautiful picture of her. This is Daphne Woolfolk, and the first conversations with Daphne were of really great quality. There was immediate chemistry and click between us. Daphne has been working for very large enterprises, but also for very small one-person enterprises, which made her experience very large. What I've appreciated about her is a special focus of bringing coaching back into companies and all the challenges that managers, line managers, HR managers, and HR business partners can live in trying to implement coaching into an enterprise. Okay, Daphne, I give you the floor. Elizabeth, please share her screen, and I wish you good luck, Daphne. All my best.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Carl. I am very glad to be here and having this conversation with you today. Again, I'm Daphne Woolfolk. I'm coming to you from Chicago in the USA. Part of the reason that I'm really glad to have this conversation with you is actually from a personal reason. I really believe in coaching and have found it to be so valuable for myself. I've had a personal coach, a series of different personal coaches for the past 10 years, and have made the decision professionally that I will always have one, because I think there's just such value that they can provide, and having an outside perspective and a professional outside perspective to help you with your career. As Carl had mentioned as well, I've done some coaching, and most recently, before joining Design Learning, managed coaches and coaching functions. So that experience, even the most recent iteration of that, I managed a coaching function where we actually had 700 managers go through. There were middle managers, and really seeing how this experience changed them and transformed them and made them better, not only for themselves but also the people that work with them, really helped me see the value in, hey, how do we help others see the strategic asset that coaching can be? And how do we help you, whether your role is to help create the environment in which coaching can be successful, or your role is that sometimes you wear that hat where you have to talk to the sponsors and you have to talk to the organizational leaders about how coaching can be successful. How do we help you on that end? And so that's really what we're going to be talking about today, is how do we set the environment, how do we create the space for coaching in companies which are so driven, where time is a premium, where they want to do it, but they don't know if they have the time or the energy to do it. How do we create that space? So what we do at Design Learning, a little bit about our company, we help people get their expertise used. So right now we're talking about you and coaching as your expertise, but the tools and processes that we help people with will help you whether or not your expertise is, say, you're a financial expert and you're trying to help other people make wise financial decisions. Whether you're a marketing expert, you're helping people make wise marketing decisions. You're an IT expert, you're helping people use technology wisely. What we focus on is the process and the tools to help you get your expertise used. Okay, so let's start off by talking about, so actually before I get into that, as if you have questions, please, as Carl mentioned, type them in. I want this to be as interactive as it possibly can be between one person and 150 people, but please ask your questions. I want this to be of value to you. So I'll try to stop every now and then to see how we can answer them. So let's start off by asking the question, something that should be familiar to you, because as coaches you ask this of your coachees, to start thinking about what the future looks like. And so that's my question to you is, what is the reality? What is the reality that you seek to create? And when I think about the people who come to us at Design Learning, and especially the people who have an HR focus, an OD focus, a training focus, a coaching focus, when we ask the question about, okay, what does success look like? What are you trying to change? We get responses like this. I'm looking to have a seat at the table. I'm looking to be a business partner. I'm looking to be a strategic partner. I'm looking to be a trusted advisor. And the question then I ask is, what does that look like? When that is happening, what is happening? And if you aren't able to, so I would ask you to think about that yourself. What is the reality that you're seeking to create? Is it one of these things that are on the screen? Is it another word or phrase that you would use? And what does that look like? And the focus here is if you can't articulate what that looks like when it's happening, how can we expect our clients or the people that we are trying to influence to be able to know what it is that we're asking of them? So the first step to really creating that space or creating that value for coaching and helping our business partners or our clients see coaching as a strategic asset is to be able to clearly articulate what it is that we're after, how we want to work with them. And that gets into our next slide. Which is about the characteristics of partnership. So what we're advocating for is really, if we're going to be successful in creating a space for coaching, we need to create a partnership with the sponsors, with the managers, with the leaders of those organizations. We're asking them to help us create an environment where coaching can happen and be successful. So what are the characteristics of an effective partnership? When you think about how partners work together, it starts first with the expertise of both parties is valued. And so the point here is to say that you as coaches have a technical expertise. You know how to connect with people. You know how to ask great questions to get people to reflect on their experiences. You help people see blind spots. And in some cases, you make suggestions about alternatives that they didn't even know existed. That is expertise. That is a skill that you bring to the party. But what we sometimes forget to recognize is that our clients as well have a body of expertise. They're expert in knowing their organizations. They're expert in knowing what resonates with their organization. If you've ever tried to make a pitch to an organization about why they should consider coaching, normally you think about what resonates. Is it a matter of this is something that can save you time? Is this something that can save you money? Is this something that, in some essence, feeds your ego, makes you feel better, may allow you to be promoted, whatever it might be? There are several different arguments we can have for the value of coaching, but to know what's going to resonate with that audience, you need to know that's something that your client can be expert in. Help me understand what is the language, what are the words that resonate with your audience. So they have a body of expertise. Your clients have a body of expertise in terms of how to gain access to their organization. Part of what we do, what you do as coaches is to not only talk to the coachee, but talk to other players in the organization so you can understand the environment in which coachees operate. Your client, your sponsor, can tell you how to get access to those people. What are the ways to work? They can open doors. They can make life a lot easier for you. So valuing that expertise that your client has to bring to the party is part of partnership. And also the language. So part of what makes you effective as a subject matter expertise in coaching is to know and respect the language of your client. So a lot of times I think that's one of the biggest challenges I find when we're talking to people in HR, in training, in OD, and in coaching is, do you know the language of the business? Just a quick example. A couple of weeks ago, I just got back from my first trip to India. So I went to India and we were training some new facilitators to be able to teach some of our workshops. And so in preparation for that experience, I did some studying on Indian culture. So talked to some people I know, did some reading, so on and so forth. And one of the things I came across was an understanding that a typical greeting in India is namaste. So I am standing, it's a sign of respect. So I'm standing in front of a group of trainers for the first time, and I want to show respect. So I greet them by, putting my hands together, doing a slight bow, saying namaste. And I get a little bit of giggles across the room, and I ask a little bit about what that's about, and they said, well, our grandparents would be really proud of you and your namaste. You did it beautifully. We haven't done that in years. Maybe that's something that we should bring back. So my point about sharing that example is perhaps that wasn't exactly right, but the respect they had for my attempt to speak their language, to understand their culture, went a long way in terms of us building a partnership. And so I say that to you as coaches as you're reaching out to different clients, to different sponsors, to different businesses. How much of an interest are you showing in their business, in their language, in what matters to them? And even if your attempts aren't perfect, there will be a respect for that that will help you as you try to develop this partnership with them. So that's the first characteristic when we talk about partnership. What is the expertise, valuing the expertise that both parties bring to the party, that bring to the situation. Second tip, when we're talking about how do we build a partnership, what is the characteristics of partnership, is that there's shared responsibility for steps in the decision-making process. And what that means is that if we think about how, steps in the decision-making process, first we have to decide what is the problem that we're trying to solve. Secondly, we have to gather data around that problem, situation, to figure out what we want to be. Third, we evaluate that data. Fourth, we make some decisions. Now, when it comes to coaching, let's think about that in a coaching manner. Who made the decision? How do you make the decision that coaching, which is really a solution, is the right solution for this situation? Is that decision made by the client and the sponsor alone, or do you get to be involved in that decision? Right? So we talk about shared responsibility, meaning that there could be a different leader in different steps in the process, but the responsibility for the outcome of that is shared by both parties. So if you're going into, for example, a coaching engagement, and the client or sponsor has said to you, we need coaching for this person, we need coaching for this team, and you accept that at face value without asking your own questions to understand how that decision was how they reached that decision, you may be missing an opportunity to build partnership. So again, think about those steps in the process, they exist. Is the responsibility shared even though the leadership may not be? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about shared responsibility. The next characteristic, again around creating partnerships, is about control. Our control in partnerships, control issues are a matter of negotiation and discussion. They aren't just assumed. You've got a couple of different ways that you can deal with control issues. One is to say, I win. The second is to say, you win. And the third is to say, discuss and negotiate. If it is I win, if it's always about doing, because disagreements will happen as we sit down and we work with our clients and we work with our sponsors, disagreements will happen. But how do we deal with them? If it's always my way, I always win. We will do it this way because this is the best way. This is the way coaching is most effective. So we have to do it my way. What kind of relationship is that setting up? If it's the other way, if it's always about your client, if it's always about client service and your client is always right, and even though what they're suggesting in terms of setting up the coaching relationship, setting up the coaching environment is not going to be effective, but you don't feel that you have the power or the right or the skills to challenge that, what kind of relationship are you setting up? What we're advocating for in terms of dealing with disagreements is more of a collaborative, or what I'm going to say, an assertive stance, what we call an assertive stance that you take when it comes to these disagreements. And by assertive, we mean recognizing that that you have a point of view, recognizing your point of view and your client or your sponsor's point of view, and negotiating somewhere to come to resolution in between. That's how partners deal with disagreements. We're not trying to set up a parent-child relationship. We're trying to set up an adult-to-adult relationship. So there are going to be some differences. There does need to be some negotiation. How do we work through that? That's what we're talking about in terms of creating this environment of partnership. So the next point, let's talk about communication. Communication in partnerships is two-way. So it goes almost without saying that what it is that you're expecting of those sponsors, what it is that you're expecting of those managers is what you have to model to them. So for example, if I want you as the sponsor to trust me, I need to trust you. If I want you as the sponsor to be honest with me, I need to be honest with you. If I want you to be open to my ideas, I have to be open to your ideas. Quick example on that has been my own experience in learning about, as it relates to coaching, is the value of face-to-face coaching. There was a time where it was pretty much believed in the community that coaching needs to happen face-to-face. But the reality is that as our organizations have evolved and we have teams that are geographically dispersed, it just is not feasible for coaching to happen face-to-face. So if we weren't open to new ideas about how do we connect, how do we still create that connection between coach and coachee, even if it's not, even if it can't be face-to-face, there would be, countless people who would never see the value of coaching. So that's I feel like the challenge of being open to ideas, the coaching industry being open to ideas allowed some great innovation to take place. And so now we see coaching happening via Skype and FaceTime. And, I had an experience where we had to do some coaching with some folks in China, and our technologies weren't working, so we ended up creating short videos of the coach that we sent to people's homes so that they could create some kind of, even though the coaching was happening over phone, we did that as a way to help them get to know that person a little bit, because connection is so important to opening up that coaching relationship. So being open to new ideas, having this two-way exchange often brings up innovation that makes us as professionals even better. So that's what we're saying in partnership, is part of respecting both points of view, having these open dialogues, being able to model what it is that you're expecting of other people. That's part of partnership. And the next point then, as it relates to partnership, is, or actually let me say, if those are what, those points, expertise of both parties is being valued, there's a shared responsibility for each step in the decision-making process. We talk about control, we discuss, we negotiate it, we just don't say my way, we don't create win-lose situations. We're looking for two-way communication, we're looking to model what it is that we're expecting of others. Why do we do all those things? Because ultimately what we're trying to do is to help our clients solve problems in a way that they stay solved, so we're not just dealing on the symptom level, and that we're also trying to leave knowledge behind. And the point that I want to make there is that helping your clients understand why you're advocating for a point of view, what you see in their situation that they may not see, what is at risk if they choose to continue to operate in the way that they're operating now. Leaving that knowledge behind is a way to be transparent, and transparency builds trust. So that's what we're looking for here as we talk about the characteristics of partnership and what we're advocating for in terms of creating an environment that allows your expertise, in this case coaching, to be used. So I'll pause there for a minute and ask you, how this resonates with you. You can give us some comments on that. Is there anything in here that challenges you, or if you have questions about, think about that. As you think about these characteristics of partnership, what are you actively doing right now with your clients, and where do you have opportunities to improve?
You can use the questions box to interact. So far you are receiving some compliments, Daphne, but not yet questions.
Okay, that's good. I will keep moving then. I'll keep moving on if something comes up. Good, so it's good to know.
Daphne, I'm sorry. Now some questions are coming in. I've been a bit too quick. The very interesting one is how do you develop trust in a coachee who doesn't trust themselves yet? So when it comes to the matter of developing trust in a coachee.
My experience has been, if you're talking about now specifically the coach-coachee relationship, it's that formula of time and transparency and consistency, right? So it's being transparent about your intent. It's about being transparent about what you see. It's about sharing with that coachee what options they have are in front of them. Doing that consistently and doing that over time is the way that I find that you build trust. And that's what we're saying, whether you're talking about the coach and the coachee, or once you put your hat on as I'm trying to develop this relationship with the sponsor or the leaders of the organization who may have some skepticism or concerns about coaching in general, about whether or not coaching works or whether or not coaching is effective, whether or not they have time for it. It's that, let me help you understand what I see, let me be transparent, and doing that consistently over time is what I have found helps build trust.
And another one coming in that I think is very interesting, we are regularly talking about does the HR function have a strategic role, yes or no? But this question is specifically focused on coaching. What could be meant, or what do you mean by coaching as a strategic asset? Could you go a little bit more in detail on that, Daphne?
Yeah, so when you think about, thank you for the question. When you think about, you are now faced with, again, you're either wearing that hat or you're in the role where you're talking to the leader of a function or a leader of an organization who wants to bring coaching in as a solution. The question that leader is probably asking is, how will this help me? How will this help our organization? In what way will this make us more effective? Is this going to save us time? Because, for example, you could do coaching as a solution that helps new people ramp up more quickly. And you could make a case, you could show how much time that acculturation process, how much time in that acculturation process you're saving by sending someone through coaching. That's a strategic advantage because you're giving time back to the organization. It might be money because maybe what you're doing with coaching is that you are retaining some of the top talent that might otherwise go elsewhere. So there is a cost associated with constantly having to replenish a pipeline that keeps getting depleted because all the great people that not only you invested in hiring, but you might have invested in training and mentoring and so forth, are going out the door. So that's a time argument for coaching. And then there's sort of the ego argument. I call it the ego argument, but this will, if you're talking to a leader who is looking for that thing, that initiative that's outside of the box that will make them look good. One of the biggest projects I had as a coaching manager was a leader who basically was trying to differentiate himself from his peers, and he saw this, if it happened well, would be a feather in his cap. So that's what I'm saying about understanding strategically what's going to resonate as you try to sell coaching, not only coaching in, but you're also going to make the argument that I need time and money from you, leader, to do this. And this is what I'm going to go back to as to why it's to your advantage to give me what I need in order to make coaching work.
Two questions I will try to summarize into one. How about when you try to let's say establish coaching within a firm, within the company? I can imagine that you need some data, that we need some statistics to prove on its return on investment. And how does that improve the sustainability of coaching activities? There are two questions that I try to combine into one.
Yeah, so here's what I would say to that. I think that is a mistake to go in with a bunch of data to talk about why coaching is of value. What I would recommend instead is doing what you do so well as coaches, is asking the right questions. Because if you ask the right questions, what you'll get from them is their data. So for example, I think about when right now I'm setting up engagements for our training company, but it works the same way if I were in your shoes setting up coaching. The questions that I ask are, okay, leader, tell me what the challenges are that you're facing. What are the critical things? What's keeping you up at night? You ask that question. Okay, now that we know what's you're up against, what's keeping you up at night. What does success look like in that? How would you like to see things different if that thing was addressed? What kind of time? So that's the next question. Then timing. What kind of timing are you under to see a change in that area? Because from that data alone can tell you whether or not your solution, coaching, it'll tell you the language with which to tell them the value of coaching. You know, and you'll know as well, well, this is an organization where coaching is a nice to have versus a need to have. And you want to spend your time and energy focusing on the people for whom coaching is a need to have. And asking those questions will give you the data, will really give you the data you need to know about where to focus.
Okay, I think that was a good summary of the questions. Thank you.
Great, great, great. So then, okay, so if we talk about the characteristics, partnerships, so thank you all for those questions. Again, I appreciate that because it helps me know where to go with the presentation and what to talk about. So if you know anything about Peter Block, who is the founder of our organization, he doesn't he's very straight with his words. And so one thing that he said, that there is no way to create that vision, there's no way to create that partnership without courage. And so sorry. So if you really are serious about creating that space for coaching in organizations, you are going to have to take some risk. You're going to have the tough conversations with these sponsors and leaders, and you have to, not be concerned. You have to be less concerned about being liked and more concerned about being effective. I'm not saying that you're looking to be a bully, but I'm, just trying to balance those two things. So what do I mean by acts of courage? What does courage look like? It means that you're making a phone call versus sending email. I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this point, but we just know that, if you're trying to set up and establish a relationship with somebody purely versus email, because that's the tone or that's the direction they're setting that tone and direction, you're missing an opportunity. You have to stop that tidal wave and pick up the phone sometimes and make a call. Even if they want you to say, hey, just send me that proposal, or just give me a few bullet points. The courage is fighting for saying, no, I'd rather have a conversation. It's more effective, we can save time or whatever by having a conversation versus a series of emails. So that's an act of courage. Expressing your wants, so what do you want from someone else in order to do good work, is an act of courage. So being able to say to a sponsor, if you want me to coach this team, but in order to do that, I need your time. I need you to can we together look at what in the environment is causing this person to behave the way that they are? Because we all know in coaching, it's not just the individual acts a certain way within an environment. And so, sometimes what leaders and sponsors don't realize is that for coaching to be effective, there may be some changes that need to happen in the environment. So part of you having courage is when you sit down with that sponsor or leader, can I have that conversation that says, that's what I want. I want us to have some conversation about the elements in the environment that are contributing to this person or this team's behavior. I want to have conversations, I want our conversations, coach and coachee, to be confidential. I know sometimes that is a sticking point for sponsors and leaders because they want to know everything that happens in the coach-coachee conversation, and that definitely has an effect on the coach-coachee conversation. And so, can you have the courage to advocate for why that needs to be confidential? Express your interest there. So those are a couple examples when we talk about expressing your wants. Putting into words what you are experiencing versus just ignoring it, as well as sharing your feelings and staying professional. If you are to be a partner, if you are to be respected, if you are to build trust, you have to be honest about what's working, what's not. Having conversations with these sponsors about discrepancies between words and actions. You said coaching was a priority, but as we look at your actions, you said coaching was a priority, but I can't get time in your calendar to talk about how this team is doing or how this person is doing. Being able to say, you know, as we go through this project, I really need you to think about and look at your role in creating this, you know, challenge that you're facing. You know, my concern about operating this way is that we are, you know, is this a setup as a got you for this person versus really an opportunity for them to learn and grow? So having the courage to say these things and have those conversations is part of your right and your responsibility as you're setting up relationships with sponsors and leaders. And then that last point, work on the preliminary stages versus rushing to implementation. Boy, you know, there's so much, and what we mean by that in a coaching sense is the sponsor or the leader calls you up and says, we need coaching for this team, or we need coaching for that person, and we want to immediately talk about how do we make that happen, versus asking the question about why. And I know that there is, you know, we do that for several reasons, right? So it's comfortable for us to immediately go into the how. Great, I know how to coach. Let's talk about how to set that up to be successful. You know, it is more of a risk to slow that person down to say, let's talk about why. Help me understand how you came to that conclusion. Why do you know, why does this person need, or this team need coaching? You know, one of the things that I have found effective in terms of dealing with that challenge is to ask the question, okay, great, so you know, you want to come, you want this person or this team to have coaching, what does success look like? And you can find from that question really how clear somebody is on, you know, are they looking to have coaching really to improve this person or this team? Are they doing it just to check off a box because, you know, their manager told them they need to do something with this team? You know, are they doing this because really they just want you to rubber stamp? You know, they already think this person should be out the door, this team should be disbanded, and they're just looking for you to rubber stamp what they, you know, their decision. You know, you really want to spend time on those kinds of, you really want to know those things before you decide whether or not you want to engage in this coaching engagement. And asking those questions is an act of courage. So again, the goal here is to make you aware of those things. You know, if you're going to create real partnerships, if you're going to create space for coaching, you have to be courageous, and these are some behavioral ways that we can demonstrate courage. Okay. Now the next phase is as we talk about, okay, so you might say, Daphne, great, I understand now, you know, I want to create partnerships. I want to be courageous. What is a process that I can use for creating those kinds of partnerships with my clients? And again, whether or not you're in the role where that's what you do, you create the environment for coaching to be successful for other people. You lead a team of coaches, or you yourself sometimes put on that hat where you sit down and you talk to the sponsors and the leaders, and you have to talk about, okay, how do we create the environment for this coaching to work? Here's a process that you can use for doing that, and it's the process that we share with people about how to get their expertise used. You know, it starts with entry and contracting. It's really where you have those conversations about what is the work and how we're going to work together. As a result of that, you get an agreement about what is the problem, or what is the problem that you're looking to solve. What is the opportunity that you're looking to take advantage of? That's entry and contracting. And once you have a sense of what is that problem or the question that we're looking to answer, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, you do discovery. Discovery is a process where you get to ask all the great questions that you want to ask to better understand what's happening in that environment. Once you do that, you get a better picture of what's happening in the environment. You go to feedback and decision making. Okay, now let's look at that data. What does that data tell us? Feedback. And what should we do about it? Decision making. And then once you make that decision, you implement the decision, and then you evaluate how it goes. So the consulting process, in a way, is basically a decision-making process, where first you identify what the problem is, you get data around it, discovery, you look at what the data is telling you, feedback, and you make some decisions about how to move forward, and then you implement those decisions. putting this in a coaching context, entry and contracting is the conversation you have with your sponsor or business leader to talk about, okay, what will success look like? You know, you want to do coaching, I understand that. That's a solution. You know, how will things be different if you do coaching? So that's the way to get at what is the problem we're trying to solve. And then how are we going to work together to get a solution? And that's where you have the conversation about partnership. What is, you know, not saying explicitly, I want us to be partners, but all of those things that we talked about earlier, using those behaviors to talk about what partnership looks like. That's the conversation that happens in entry and contracting. And then discovery is your, you know, going into the organization. It may be just talking to that sponsor more about, okay, you are an expert sponsor in your organization. You know, I want coaching to be a strategic asset. Tell me what, you know, what you're up against. Tell me what a strategic asset would look like to you. Tell me what the challenges are in your organization. How can we link coaching to those challenges? You're getting their opinion, you're leveraging their expertise to help you be successful. And then feedback and decision making, you may decide, that might help you decide what the coaching structure looks like, and it may help you decide that coaching isn't the right intervention for this group at that time. And so then, you know, implementation and evaluation. So that's how you would use this process as it relates to setting up successful coaching engagements. So I will pause for a few seconds there just to allow that to sink in and see if you have any questions on that, if that makes sense, again, as this relates to setting up coaching engagements.
We'll wait for a few seconds to let people type.
Okay.
Yes, here are some. Some complement, useful model. Yes. Yeah. This is perhaps an interesting practical question. When do you raise the topic of fees when it comes to money and invoicing? When do you do that?
Yep. So this is which is a great question, because what we're talking about here is the social contract about how we're going to work together, which happens underneath the umbrella of the legal contract. So the decision has already been made that we're going to work together. And this is you sitting down with the leader to talk about how we're going to work together. What does that look like? That's how this could be used. Now, the other way to use that is before the legal contract is made. So you could informally have these kinds of conversations or pieces of this conversation with your sponsor or the decision maker, and which fees would be part of this, you know, would be part of the feedback and decision making phase, actually, because you can't decide what the fees are until you know what the work is. So part of what might be entry and contracting, part of what might be discovery is knowing if there are any limitations around fees, knowing about how people think about, when I say limitations, you know, people always say that they can't afford things, right? Is it because they don't see the value, or is there really a budget that you're up against? So you want to have some of those conversations in discovery, right? So that when it comes to feedback and decision making, this is what we're going to do. The final fee will come out in there, in that decision making process. So again, two ways. Informally, you can have that conversation before the legal document is made, and then you can have this conversation again once you're ready to sit down and start getting to work. And it works like any model. You know, a model gives us, you know, a framework, not a law, right? So it gives us a framework, and how I've seen a lot of people use this, and hope you find value, is to use it to think about right now, you know, what are either the negotiations that you're in, you know, you're in that stage, you're trying to negotiate, or you're trying to come to agreement with a sponsor or a client about new work, or you're, the contract has already been made and now you're sitting down with leaders to make it happen. Where are you, if you think about this process, where are you in those engagements, and how could understanding that help you move forward? So it's meant to be a framework to help you know where you are and give you some ideas about how to move forward. Another question we get about this model sometimes is, can you, is it just straight shot, or do you go up and down? You definitely go up and down. And the entry, contracting, discovery, and feedback, the point you want to make is those are the preliminary things. All of those things need to happen before you start doing stuff. So often we want to just jump right into there. A client calls and says, hey, I want, coaching for this team. Okay, great, let's make it happen, let's do it. Without having the opportunity to step back and ask questions to understand, okay, so you want entry, or so you want coaching, so what do you want from me personally? What does that look like? Here's some things that I want from you in order to, before I agree to this work. I want to be able to ask you some questions to better understand what's happening in your organization and how they will receive this. This is the right time for this, things like that. I want to be able to tell you what I see when I ask those questions, and I want us to get both together decide if coaching is the right intervention at this time, or how to make coaching an effective intervention at this time, whatever it might be. But it's more than, the point is just not jumping in saying, yep, great, how do we do it? What should it look like? Okay. So, it's natural for us. So, if you do all this, you have these great conversations. I don't want to mislead you to believe everything's going to be, beautiful peaches and cream. There are going to be challenges because basically, again, as you're talking to organizations who aren't familiar with coaching or maybe doing coaching for the first time, there's going to be some resistance because, as we know, resistance is a part of the change process. So it's natural for us to feel that if we can present our ideas clearly and logically, and if we have the best interests of our clients at heart, our clients will accept our expertise and follow our suggestions. But the reality is, resistance is a predictable, natural reaction against the process of being helped. So us knowing that going in will make us more effective as we sit down and create these agreements with organizations for coaching, and we'll see resistance actually as a good thing because it means that somebody's seriously trying to figure out, how do I make this work for me? If somebody is not asking questions and showing some concern, I'm concerned because I have to question how seriously they're thinking about whether or not this is going to work for them. So when you talk about resistance, what we're talking about is really that there's a difference between resistance. I'm going to go ahead. There's a difference between resistance here and an overt disagreement. So if somebody is really has some objections, some concerns, some misunderstanding, they like what you're saying about coaching, but they just don't have the budget, and they really don't have the budget, that's fine. That is a overt disagreement. Or if you're advocating that coaching needs to happen face-to-face and they're telling you, I've got teams spread across the globe and we just can't get them together, in the time frame that we need this to happen, that's an overt disagreement. That's not what we're talking about here in resistance. When we talk about resistance, resistance is more of the person who either because they don't know or they have some concern that they're not directly expressing. They're not expressing it that directly. They may have concerns about time or budget, but they're expressing it in a different way. And that's, I'm going to go back to here, what that might look like. So, you call a client and you're talking, that everything sounds good. You've talked about coaching. You've talked about the value of coaching. They seem to be on the same page. You leave a meeting and you say, okay, I'm going to send you the proposal, and then you agree they'll get back to you in a week, and then they go silent, right? So that seems like, makes you scratch your head a little bit. What's going on there? Something's going on. That's what we're calling resistance. Or you're talking to a client about the challenges that you see in a team, and what the sponsor says is, well, it's Sally's fault, or it's Johnny's fault, it's everyone else's fault. When your data is basically saying part of the challenges that this team is having is because of what the leader is doing or isn't doing. So the leader, as you bring these challenges to the leader is all about blaming other people, can easily talk about the role other people are playing in this team's challenges, but isn't willing to own their own role. Okay, that's what we're talking about, resistance, and all these other behaviors that you're seeing around the circle. And so part of what we need to be good at in terms of helping build relationships with these sponsors and these leaders is to know that really sometimes the reason that these things are going on the outside is that anytime we're trying to introduce change to people, we are possibly bumping up against three harsh realities. One is commitment. We're asking them to do something that they really don't think is that important or isn't high on their priority list. Control, we're asking to do something in their teams or their organizations that they don't have enough visibility into. Or vulnerability, we're asking them to do something, we want their participation and help in a way that has the risk of making them look bad, right? So we know, antidote to commitment is to think about how can we change or adjust our offering so that it meets with the timeline that you have available, because you're not likely to change somebody's priorities, but how can you work within where it is in the priority list? Control, the antidote to control is visibility. How do I give you visibility into what it is I'm doing so you feel comfortable that you have enough control? And vulnerability, if you're concerned something that can make you look bad, how do I work with you so that you can look good? And so so the point here is part of what we need to be good at is not just dealing with what's out here, but focusing, getting our clients to help tell us what's in here because we know how to deal with what's in here. This is a futile chase if you chase what's out here. And so that's what we're talking about, this resistance that you can see anytime as you go through this process with your clients, with your sponsors, those roadblocks that seem to pop out of nowhere and get in the way of your effectiveness as coaching. How do you deal with that?
Daphne, sorry to interrupt you for a moment. We proceed and still for 10 more minutes, but for some people, for agenda reasons, they may have to quit us here because, well, normally it's until the hour. So for those people who still need the second password is Clinton, the last name of another presidential candidate for the United States. Clinton is the second password. So, well, that you should send to elizabeth.jackson@coachfederation.org. But I repeat, the large majority of you won't have to send any passwords because you're automatically registered through the GoToWebinar platform. So for the majority, no need to send a password. Only the ones that have participated by phone have to. Thank you. Sorry, Daphne.
No, thank you. And for those who do have to leave, let me say thank you for being on the call. My contact information is at the end of this presentation. If you have questions in the future, or something that occurs to you, please, or you want to share your feedback or thoughts about this, I welcome all comments. So please feel free to use that. So thank you for that. So we are coming near the end, and I want I want to have time to answer your questions. So if you do, for those of you who are able to stay on, please feel to start typing in your questions as I start moving towards the wrap up here. The thing we talked about how your clients resist. The goal here is not to chase these activities, but to go after those in the middle. It's also to realize at the same time that you have resistance as well. So if you may have felt at any time as I'm going through this presentation, if I hit on a topic that you found made you, a little bit nervous or anxious or kind of, caught you, kind of resonated with you, and you're kind of saying to yourself, wow, why is that hitting me in a certain way? Perhaps we're tapping into something that has to do with your own harsh reality too. Whether it's not in this conversation or you're thinking about, your clients, what are those things that our clients do that tend to make us clench our fists or kind of squirm a little bit in our chairs, or how do they hit our hot buttons? The harsh reality for us is around relevance, competence, and self-esteem. We all want to know that what it is that we have to offer clients is relevant. It's something that they care about. So if somebody's ignoring me, it might tap into my concern, which is, this is something that's not important. Competence. I want to make sure that I'm able to handle the challenges that my clients bring up. So, I go back to, again, the challenge around face-to-face coaching. There are some, if you feel that face-to-face is the only way to do coaching, is that, perhaps there's some concern there that, can you create connections with people if it isn't face-to-face? So there might be some competence concerns. Self-esteem. Nobody likes to, to be yelled at or be, told that you're not irrelevant and you're not important. So sometimes the point here is to say that sometimes what our clients do taps against our own harsh realities, and what are the things that we do that deflect rather than dealing with what's happening in ourselves, our harsh realities. So being able to confront that is also part of what makes us effective in setting up coaching engagements.
Are you still open for a question, Daphne?
Most definitely.
Yes, I think a very, very interesting one here. Can you provide any more detail about client resistance as it relates to making coaching a priority? What if it's the priority for the client but not for the organization? I would like to broaden that question a bit. How do you deal with a gap of needs when the needs of the client or the coachee are clearly different than the ones of the organization? How do you deal with that?
Well, it depends on how, who did you set the agreement up with? Is it, are you setting up, are you speaking of where you set up the initial engagement with the coachee, or if, in terms of somebody engaged you personally to do coaching for them, or if it is you set up the engagement with, the coachee's manager or leader to do coaching on behalf of that individual. If it were the latter, if it were a case where you set up the agreement with the coachee's manager or organization to do it on behalf of the individual, you're talking about data that needs to go back to that sponsor, a conversation you need to have with that sponsor about a difference in priorities. That they need to be, so what you're talking about is, I'm going to go back to this model here. You discovered some new information about a disconnect in priorities. You need to share that feedback with the sponsor so that you together can make a decision about what to do about it. That's basically what you're facing. So I hope that was helpful. So yeah, let me just wrap up here then. So we talked a little bit about the resistance that you of yourself and the resistance of others. And the point that the thought I really wanted to leave you with is it's really about conversations. What we're talking about here is changing the conversations, and specifically, as it relates to the conversations that you're having with the sponsors and with those who set up the work, who have control over the environment in which coaching can be effective. Because you can do great work with a coachee, but you have to think about the environment in which they're operating. And conversations really is your lever. It really is your opportunity to change what's happening in that organization. So my challenge to you is, are you fighting for what you think is important? Do you have the courage to have those conversations in a respectful way, in an assertive way, with leaders about what it takes to be successful? And at the same time, are you open to listening to what they're saying and what their challenges are, so that you can move in a way that's beneficial for both? That's what I have to share. If there are any other questions, please, now, or as I said before, my contact information is at the end of this presentation. Would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your questions as well. So thank you.
I see one question here. What might be a good example of questions related to the core of the client's harsh reality to address those roadblocks? I'm not sure if I totally understand the question. The client's harsh reality to address those roadblocks.
So yeah, in terms of if I understand the question, it's like how do you get at what's a question to help people get at these harsh realities? And so the answer to that, so if that's not the right question, please retype it. The answer to that is it's not a question, it's a mirror. What you basically do is you hold up a mirror to people about these behaviors. And you know, in the 2 minutes that we have left, I really can't give that answer total justice. So that person who asked that question, send me an email and we can go through it in more detail. But you know, basically what you're doing is you're calling people out on this behavior. So for example, go silent might look like, you know, I've sent you 3 emails, I haven't received a response from you. Calling people on that behavior is basically giving them an invitation to tell you what's really going on with them. And once you get them to share their truth, you can deal with their truth.
Okay, there's one more. Perhaps it's too intensive to answer it here, but well, how can coaching be used as a lever for cultural change? Well, that's of course the $1 million question, I guess. Can you briefly, say, last minute, say something on that, Daphne?
Yeah, I think so. Again, if that is the goal, is that a goal that you have, or is that a goal that your sponsor has? And when you talk about cultural change, you know, what are that is a general term to me. What is it that you're looking more specifically to change in the environment? I mean, those are the kinds of conversations I'd be having as I think about this process. You know, so what is the problem that we're trying to solve? Cultural change. You know, what are the challenges in the culture? What are the specific behaviors that we're looking to change? I think all that needs to be defined before you can really get at your solution, because it could go a variety of different ways. So it's about taking those general terms and making them more specific.
Okay, Daphne. That gives us the time to stop this webinar. I'm very, very, very grateful, Daphne, for the way of bringing such a topic. The first reactions that I see here in my question box are very, very positive. Thanks a lot for bringing such an excellent, high-quality seminar, and I'll get back in touch to you when I have more detailed feedback. Thank you to all the participants who continue to be with us, who continue to be very faithful members of this community of practice. And we will be back in April, the first Tuesday of April, with a brand new webinar, and you will soon get an email with invite for that webinar. You can you can register yourself for this community through the URL address that I've left in the chat box. You can find it in the last chat box. And further, I wish you an excellent continuation of the day and hear you back in April. Bye-bye. Thank you, Daphne. Bye.